I've been a long-haul truck driver for 12 years, and I've seen a lot of weird things on America's back highways, but nothing like this. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing a figure in my rear-view mirror during my night drives. Just a man, standing perfectly still behind my truck. Not running, not walking, just there. At first, I thought it was a reflection from something inside the cab. I wiped the mirror, adjusted it, even turned on the cab light to check if something behind me was creating the illusion, but the shape stayed. A tall man, long limbs, head tilted slightly downward like he was watching the road instead of me. Every time I slowed down, he didn't get closer. Every time I sped up, he didn't get farther. He held the exact same distance from the back of my trailer, around 30 feet or so, no matter how fast I went, and every time I blinked, he seemed to sharpen. More defined, more real. That first night, I didn't tell anyone. I just kept driving, but the next night, he was there again, and the next, always 30 feet behind me. Always still, always watching, and tonight, he finally moved. Tonight's haul took me along a nearly empty stretch of highway in northern Wyoming, cold, flat, miles of nothing but snow and blacktop. I checked my mirror out of habit, expecting the same silent figure standing behind my trailer, but he wasn't there. For the first time in 3 weeks, the space behind me was completely empty. I should have felt relieved. I didn't. Instead, my stomach twisted like something was wrong, like the absence meant he'd changed the rules. I slowed the truck to a crawl, 5 miles per hour. 2, stopped. I kept the hazards blinking and stared into the mirror. Nothing, just the red flash of lights bouncing across the snow. I leaned forward, trying to catch more detail, and the cab lights flickered, once, twice, then everything inside the truck shut off. Engine dead, dashboard black, heater silent, only the hazard lights stayed on, faint and pulsing in the darkness. That's when I heard it. A single crunch of snow, behind the cab, slow, deliberate, heavy. I didn't look into the side mirrors. I already knew what I'd see. I whispered to myself, trying to steady my breathing, not real, not real, not real. But then, something slid along the side of my trailer, long nails, dragging metal, too slow to be anything human, too steady to be a trick of the wind. I gripped the wheel so hard, my knuckles went white. Another crunch of snow, closer, right outside my driver's side door, and then he knocked. One slow, heavy tap on the window, like he was asking to come in. I froze. My breath felt like it crystallized in my throat. Nobody, nothing, had ever come this close before. He always stayed behind the trailer, always out of direct sight, but now he was inches from my door. Another knock, harder this time, slow, intentional. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe, because deep down I already knew the rule. If I looked at his face, I wasn't walking away. Something brushed the glass, not a hand, not fingers, something too long, too smooth, like a branch or a limb with no joints. It traced a line down the window. Soft, curious, then a voice came through the cold, muffled, like someone talking from far underwater. "Driver." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a whisper. It was a presence, a vibration I felt more than heard. Open. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to move, not to even think about opening anything. My hand twitched toward the lock, not because I wanted to, but because something was pulling at my thoughts, coaxing me, inviting me. Open. Door. I squeezed my eyes shut and grabbed the steering wheel with both hands. If I let go, even for a second, I knew I'd unlock the door. Another sound pressed against the glass, like someone leaning their entire weight on it. Then, a slow exhale, warm, human-sounding. Except the breath didn't fog the window, and it lasted far, far too long. My truck cab creaked. Something shifted its weight against it, heavy enough to rock the entire vehicle. And then, without warning, bang! The side mirror snapped forward, like something slammed its full force into it. The truck shook. Then silence. Total, freezing silence. I stayed rigid, hands locked on the wheel, eyes closed. 10 seconds passed. 20. A minute. Then the engine roared back to life on its own. Lights flickered on. Heater hummed. Everything returned, except the sense of safety. I opened my eyes. The window beside me was covered in a single perfect handprint, except it had 6 fingers, and they were far too long to belong to anything human. I sat there staring at the 6-fingered print. My breath was shaking, my pulse thumped in my ears so loudly it drowned out everything else. I wiped the glass with my sleeve. The print didn't smear, didn't fade, didn't budge. It was like the glass had grown around it. That was when the GPS screen blinked. Static washed across it, white noise swirling like a storm. Then the route reappeared. Except, the highlighted line wasn't on any highway I knew. It wasn't even on a road. It traced through empty woods, blank wilderness, unmapped space. The screen displayed a message I had never seen before: follow him. My stomach dropped. I slammed the power button, but the GPS stayed on. I unplugged it. Still on, it pulsed brighter, almost alive. Then my headlights lit up on their own. And that's when I saw it. A narrow road, cut perfectly straight through the snow, fresh, untouched, but leading into pitch-black trees where no road had ever been. And at the entrance stood a figure, tall, thin, motionless. Its arms hung down to its knees, its head tilted slightly, too slightly, as if it was listening for something inside my skull. My truck engine revved by itself, hard, like something urging me forward. My right foot lifted from the brake. I didn't move it. I slapped my leg with both hands, trying to force control back. The pedal sank slowly, slowly, as if someone invisible was pressing it for me. The truck inched toward the new road. That long-armed figure stepped backward into the darkness, inviting me in. Snow swirled, the woods swallowed everything. The GPS whispered from its speaker, not a voice, but a low pulse of sound like static forming a word. Come. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles went white. My foot kept pressing down. Gutan. The truck gained speed. The road behind me disappeared, literally vanished, like the world was erasing every escape route. I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a road someone built. It was a road he created for the people he chose. And now, he had chosen me. The deeper I went, the stranger the road became. The snow wasn't falling naturally anymore. It drifted sideways, like it was being pulled by invisible hands. The trees leaned in toward the truck, all of them, every trunk bent slightly inward as if they were watching me pass. The GPS kept humming that low, static whisper. I tried to toss it onto the passenger floor, but it snapped back upright like it was held in place. The screen showed no speed, no distance, just 2 words: keep driving. My breath fogged the windshield, but then, after a moment, I realized something horrifying. That fog pattern didn't look like breath. It spread in shapes, long, thin streaks, like fingers dragging across the inside of the glass. I froze. My chest tightened. Something inside my truck was breathing with me. A crack of wood echoed from the trees to my left, then another, a slow rhythm, step, 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 following beside the truck. I refused to look, but instinct won. I turned my head. That figure was moving parallel to me. Not running, not walking, gliding. Its shape flickered between the trees, only visible when my headlights threaded between the trunks. Every time I caught a glimpse, its head was tilted more unnatural, more curious, like it was studying the way fear rearranged my face. The truck suddenly jerked. Something massive slammed onto the bed. The entire frame bounced. Metal groaned. I whipped around. All I saw was snow and darkness, but I heard it. Slow, dragging steps. On the metal, getting closer to the cab. My fingers dug into the steering wheel. I pressed the gas, but the truck didn't accelerate. It drove at the same slow, steady speed as if someone else was dictating the pace. A long shape slid across the rear window. A silhouette, thin, too long, arms stretching down like wet ropes. It paused right behind my head. I felt the glass press inward, like something was leaning against it, something hungry. I clenched my teeth and whispered to myself, "Don't look, don't look." The GPS beeped sharply. The screen flashed red. "He knows you're scared." A whisper scraped against my ear, not from behind me, but from the empty passenger seat. It said one word, bright and clear. "Stop." I squeezed the wheel so hard my vision blurred. "No," I whispered. Then the whisper came again, closer this time, louder, shaking with excitement. "Stop!" The trees opened up ahead, forming a clearing, and at the center of it, a house. An old cabin with one window glowing, dim, yellow, waiting. The road curved toward it. The truck followed without my control. Whatever was whispering beside me, it went silent. Silent because it knew. I was driving straight toward where it wanted me. The closer I got to the cabin, the more the world around me changed. The snow stopped falling. Just stopped, frozen in the air like thousands of white grains suspended on invisible threads. The truck rolled forward on its own. My foot wasn't on the gas. My hands barely held the wheel. That whisper, the one that had begged me to stop, wasn't speaking anymore, but I could feel it beside me, a presence, a shape, sitting in the passenger seat like a shadow wearing skin. The cabin's single window glowed weakly. A figure stood behind the glass. Still, tall, watching me arrive. My headlights hit the clearing. The trees bent away sharply, like they were afraid of whatever lived inside that house. The truck eased to a halt, the engine cut off. The radio died. Even the dashboard lights flickered and went black. Everything fell silent. Too silent, like the kind of quiet that settles over a room just before something terrible speaks. I didn't want to move, didn't want to breathe. But then, someone knocked on my windshield. One tap, soft, precise. I jerked back so hard, my spine hit the seat. My eyes snapped to the glass, nothing. Just my own reflection trembling. Then, another tap, this time on my side window. Closer. I forced myself to look, and I wished I hadn't. A face stared back at me through the glass. But it wasn't a normal face. It was stretched, skin pulled too tight across bone, eyes wide like they'd been opened by force. And it was smiling. A long, trembling smile, like it had never practiced the expression before. The whisper returned, but not from beside me. This time it came from outside, muffled through the glass. "Come inside." My body locked up. Every instinct screamed, "No," but the door handle clicked. On its own, my door cracked open against my will, a thin blade of icy air slicing across my legs. The face outside leaned closer, its teeth tiny and too many, like someone had carved a grin into a skull. "Come inside." It repeated, as if the words were stitched into the thing's throat. I grabbed the door and shoved it shut with all the strength I had. The lock jumped down automatically. Click. The creature's smile twitched like it was delighted. Then another face appeared behind it. And another, all staring at me, all smiling that wrong smile, all whispering the same two words in unison. "Come inside." The cabin door creaked open in the distance. A warm glow spilled out. And inside that glow, a silhouette stood waiting. Tall, still, shaped like a man, but wrong in ways my brain refused to process. He raised a hand, and the cabin light flickered. The creatures surrounding my truck fell silent instantly, not moving, not blinking, just waiting for the man in the doorway to speak. He lifted one finger and pointed directly at me. Then his voice rang out, deep and echoing across the clearing. "Get out of the truck." The moment he pointed at me, the entire clearing seemed to tilt. The air grew heavy, pressing against my ribs, making every breath feel like a punishment. I gripped the wheel with both hands. My knuckles burned. My fingers locked. There was no way I was stepping outside. But the man in the doorway didn't move. He just kept pointing. As if the gesture alone had weight, as if his arm was tied to some invisible command that everything else obeyed. The creatures around my truck shifted, just a tiny movement, a twitch of their heads. Their eyes widened in perfect sync, like puppets reacting to their master's pull. "Get out of the truck," the man repeated. This time the words vibrated inside my skull as if he'd spoken from inside my mind. My jaw clenched, my left hand twitched, my foot slid an inch toward the brake, but I forced myself still. "No," I whispered. Barely audible, barely real. But something heard me. One of the creatures snapped its neck sideways so sharply I heard the crack through the glass. Its jaw dropped lower than any human jaw could, and it laughed, a wet, choking laugh like someone gargling broken glass. I reached for the keys, but the ignition was dead. Completely dead. Even the click of the key was gone. Then the truck began to shake, soft at first, a tremor. Then harder and harder. The creatures had placed their hands on the frame, pushing, rocking, thumping their palms against the metal like they were checking if the shell was ripe enough to crack open. I slammed my back into the seat and pressed both feet against the floor, bracing myself as the truck bucked violently. Inside the cabin doorway, the tall man tilted his head, slow, curious, almost disappointed. "It won't open unless you choose it," he said, not shouting, not demanding, just stating a fact like a teacher correcting a child. I didn't understand. Choose what? The door? The cabin? Him? The creatures stopped, all at once, frozen mid-push. Then, in perfect unison, they stepped back from the truck, silently, forming a wide ring around me. Their faces lifted toward the sky as if waiting for a signal, and the man in the doorway lowered his hand. The light behind him flickered again, and the world pulsed. Just once, like a heartbeat under the snow. "Look at the road," he said. My eyes darted instinctively to the windshield, and my stomach dropped. The road I had driven down no longer existed. The path that brought me here, the one cutting through the forest, was gone, replaced by a wall of thick black trees twisted into unnatural angles, branches knotted together like fingers interlocking to trap something inside. Something like me. "There is no leaving," the man said, "not until you see what brought you here." The light flickered again, this time brighter, and the shadows behind him moved like something was walking out of the darkness. Something with too many legs, something scraping the wooden floor with every step. He stepped aside, making room for whatever was coming forward. Then he looked back at me and said, "Come inside, or it will come out." My breath fogged the glass, each exhale sharp and uneven. "Come inside, or it will come out." His words echoed in my skull long after his mouth stopped moving. I didn't reach for the door. I didn't move at all. Every muscle in my body screamed, "Stay in the truck." But another part of me, the part that sensed danger the way animals do, felt something worse pressing from behind that doorway, something that wasn't meant to step into the open. One of the creatures closest to my window drooped its head as if disappointed. Then its nostrils flared. It sniffed the air. Once, twice, slowly, methodically. It was smelling me. My hand fumbled for my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no emergency connection, just a glowing clock on the lock screen frozen at 12 a.m. I'd been out here much longer than that. The man in the cabin doorway shifted, watching me, waiting, his posture unnaturally still, like a portrait come alive. Behind him, the shape in the darkness crawled closer. I could only see parts, a glint of something jointed, a section of pale limb that bent the wrong direction, a claw pulling its way across the wooden floor. The sound it made was soft but unmistakable. A wet, dragging noise mixed with a low, trembling click. My pulse hammered in my throat. The man turned his head a little, listening to the creature behind him, the same way someone listens to a child whispering. Then he faced me again. "It doesn't want to wait," he said. "You're upsetting it." Something large shifted behind him. A heavy thud rattled the cabin walls. Dust drifted down from the rafters. The creatures outside flinched, not in fear, but in anticipation. Like they knew what happened next. The man leaned forward, just enough that I saw the true shape of his face in the flickering light. His features weren't wrong, but they were unfinished. Like something had carved a face and then stopped halfway. His eyes were too deep, his skin too smooth, his smile too slight. "Last chance," he whispered. "Open your door." I swallowed hard. My hand hovered over the handle, but didn't touch it. And then, from somewhere inside the cabin, came a voice. Weak, hurting, human. "Help, please. Someone help me." My entire body froze. My brain clawed for an explanation. Someone was inside, someone alive, someone begging. The man stepped aside completely. It wasn't an invitation. It was him making room for whatever I chose to walk into. At the back of the cabin, in the darkness, a small hand reached out, fingers trembling, bloody, clutching the air as if searching blindly for rescue. The voice broke again. "Please, don't leave me." The creatures outside turned to me slowly. every head tilting in perfect unison, waiting for my decision like an audience holding its breath. If I stayed in the truck, the crawling thing would come out. If I went inside, I walked into whatever had hurt that person, whatever was waiting behind the shadows. The man lowered his gaze as if growing impatient. "Choose," he said. "It has to be now." And then, the light behind him flickered violently, stretching his shadow across the snow like a hand reaching for my truck. I finally reached for the door. Not because I wanted to, but because the truck suddenly locked itself. Every door, every window, sealed tight. The decision was no longer mine. The locks clicked again, once, twice, 3 times, not unlocking, just resetting, like something was testing the mechanism, like something was learning how it worked. My breath went shallow. The cold suddenly felt sharp, as if the air itself had teeth. Outside the cabin, the creatures turned away from me and looked toward the trees, their bodies going rigid like animals sensing something bigger approaching. The man at the doorway noticed it too. His unfinished face twitched. Just once, but sharply, as if glitching. He didn't look at me anymore. He looked past me. Over the truck, into the black timberline behind me. And then I heard it, a sound so faint I thought it was the wind at first. But it wasn't. It was a voice. My voice, calling my name, from the woods. My heart stuttered. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Everything inside me rejected it instantly, because I hadn't spoken a word. Then it called again. Closer this time, perfectly mimicking my tone, my pitch, my breathing pattern. It was me, but it wasn't. The creatures backed away from the trees, lowering themselves to the ground as if submitting to something more powerful than them. The man's posture changed for the first time. He looked worried, like whatever was coming was not part of his plan. He stepped fully outside, voice tight. "It followed you," he whispered. "You brought it here." My throat went dry. Something massive moved between the trees, dragging branches, snapping limbs, breathing heavy. A slow, wet inhale that made the frost on my windshield vibrate. Then the voice came again, this time just a few feet behind the truck. "Let me in." I froze. My entire body refused to turn around, but through the side mirror I saw it. A shape stepping halfway out of the woods. A silhouette. My silhouette, but wrong, stretched taller, ribs visible through the skin, jaw unhinged just a little too far, as if smiling the way a predator smiles right before it eats something alive. It lifted a hand, my hand, and dragged its nails across the back of the truck with a slow, deliberate scrape that made every nerve in me buzz. Inside the cabin, the faint human voice whimpered again. "Help, please." The creature wearing my shape pressed its forehead against the back window. I could see its reflection in the mirror. I could see myself staring back. And then it whispered, in a perfect imitation of my own voice, "You're already dead in there." The man in the cabin took a step toward me, finally breaking his silence. "You cannot stay in the truck," he said, urgent now. "That thing isn't here to take you." He paused, his unfinished face tightened. "It's here to replace you." Behind me, the creature exhaled, a hot, sour breath that fogged the glass. And slowly, very slowly, a second hand, also mine, rose beside the first. The glass began to crack. I didn't even realize I was running until I hit the end of the hallway. My palms were sweating so badly the flashlight almost slipped from my hand. The low hum, the one I'd been hearing since the attic, was louder now. It wasn't coming from the bulbs or the pipes. It was coming from behind the walls. I pushed through a service door and stumbled into another narrow stairwell. The air down here was colder. Too cold for an old building with the heat still on. My breath fogged as I descended, each step creaking under my weight. At the bottom, I came face to face with a glass door. A perfect, spotless glass door, inside a building that hadn't been touched in 12 years. There was a small brass plate beside it. "Room 0, do not enter while occupied." I swallowed hard. Occupied by what? I tried the door. It clicked open smoothly, like it had been oiled yesterday. Inside was a stark white room, empty except for a wooden chair in the center and a glass observation window on the far wall. The hum was vibrating through the floor here, crawling up my legs, rattling in my bones. I stepped toward the chair, shining the flashlight on it. Scratched deep into the seat were 5 words. "Don't turn your back here." My stomach tightened. I backed away, slowly, keeping the entire room in view. That's when the observation window flickered, just for a second, like a monitor turning on. A dark silhouette stood behind the glass, tall, motionless. Watching me, I froze. My breath hitched. It didn't move, didn't shift, didn't blink, just stood there, as if it had been waiting for me the entire time. The temperature dropped again, so fast the flashlight dimmed. My ears began to ring. Something scraped behind me. I spun around. Nothing was there, but when I turned back toward the window, the silhouette was closer, right up against the glass now, its head tilted slightly, an unnatural angle, like a curious animal studying prey. I tried to step back, but my legs were trembling too badly to obey. The hum shifted into a low, droning whisper that felt like it was coming from inside my skull. The lights overhead buzzed, flickered, and cut out. Pitch black. I felt the room stretch around me, like the walls were breathing, inching closer. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoed from every direction at once. I raised the flashlight with shaking hands and clicked it on. The beam landed directly on the glass. There was no silhouette, but there was a handprint, fresh, pressed from my side of the glass. The whispering grew louder, chanting, repeating something I couldn't understand. My pulse hammered in my ears. I backed up toward the door, never tearing my eyes away from the glass. Then, in the reflection, I saw something standing behind me, tall, crooked, leaning over my shoulder like it was reading my thoughts. The flashlight flickered, the whispering stopped, and a voice, clear, close, right next to my ear, exhaled. "Found you, I didn't think." Instinct took over. I bolted for the door. The moment my hand hit the handle, every light in the room exploded back on. Blinding white, buzzing like a swarm of bees trapped in the walls. My shadow stretched across the floor, but something was wrong. There were 2 of them. One was mine. The other was taller, bent and reaching. I shoved the door open so hard it slammed into the wall, and I threw myself into the stairwell. The hum roared to life behind me, the air vibrating so violently it felt like my bones would shake apart. I sprinted up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, until I burst into a hallway I didn't recognize. The paint was peeling, the tiles cracked, but a warm yellow light glowed at the far end like an exit sign. I didn't trust it, but I also didn't have a choice. Halfway down the hallway, I noticed something. The framed photographs lining the walls. Black and white portraits. Every person in them had their eyes scratched out, except one. A figure in the back row, blurred slightly, face turned toward me. Watching, I slowed. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I stepped closer. The figure wasn't part of the original photograph. It had been added, faded like an old composite, wearing a long coat and holding what looked like a file box under one arm. Below the photo was a brass label. The Archivist. I didn't like how familiar that name felt. As I stared, the photo's glass surface rippled as if something behind it was pressing forward. I stumbled back, and the lights overhead flickered again. A door to my right creaked open by itself. I knew I shouldn't look. But the air behind me suddenly grew colder, like someone was standing inches from my neck again. Slowly, I turned my head toward the open door. Inside was a dim office, lined with old metal cabinets and stacks of dusty evidence boxes. Papers covered the floor, all stamped with red ink. Classified, "Do not release." On the desk in the center was a single open file, and on top of it, my employee badge, the same badge I'd lost on the first day I came to inspect this building. The photo on it was the same, except my eyes were scratched out. I stepped forward, trembling, and picked up the file. Inside were reports I'd never seen, written in shaky handwriting. Subject continues approaching restricted areas. Subject ignores warnings. Subject persists. Subject must be documented. Documented. My skin crawled. The last page was blank except for a line at the top. Subject status unconfirmed. Enter. Name. My name was already written there, in a handwriting that looked exactly like mine. Something shifted behind me. Slow footsteps, slow breathing, slow exhale. I didn't want to turn. I knew what I'd see. But my body moved on its own, and when I finally faced the doorway, a tall silhouette filled it completely. Long coat, file box under its arm, head tilted in that same curious, unnatural angle. A voice, deep and distorted, like it was dragging itself up from a basement full of static, rumbled, "You're late for your appointment." The doorway seemed to stretch taller as I stared at the figure. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed violently, throwing shadows that twisted and danced across the walls. I couldn't move. My legs felt rooted to the ground. The file box in the figure's hand shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly, but it was enough to make me realize it was moving on its own. "Your time is recorded," the figure said. Its voice was a distorted echo of my own, layered over something much older. Every step, every breath, every choice, documented. I tried to speak. My lips wouldn't form words. The room itself seemed to inhale, sucking all sound and warmth away. A sharp, metallic clack echoed behind me. I spun around. A stack of filing cabinets had slid toward me as if pushed by invisible hands. I stumbled back into the desk. The open file toppled to the floor, pages scattered like leaves in a storm. The words on each page rearranged themselves mid-air, lines twisting until my handwriting appeared. Not mine, but almost mine, scratched and trembling. "You've ignored the rules," the archivist said. It stepped closer. The hum of the building rose to a deafening pitch. Every shadow in the room elongated, reaching for me. One of the shadows touched my shoulder. Cold, sticky, alive. I yelped. My body jerked violently. But when I looked down, nothing was there. The figure extended a long, pale hand. "Sign here," it said, gesturing toward a blank page in the file. The pen hovered in mid-air, waiting. Every instinct screamed to run, but the pen was magnetized to my hand. My fingers wrapped around it, trembling uncontrollably. The shadow behind me lunged, but the figure blocked it effortlessly. It tilted its head, watching me, almost amused. I bent over the page. The pen touched the paper. Immediately I felt it. A pulse in my veins, a twisting, sinking feeling, as if my memories were being poured onto the page. Every mistake, every secret, every moment I tried to forget. And then the figure leaned closer, whispering, "You belong to the archive now." I tried to yank my hand away, but it was too late. The pen was no longer in my grasp. It floated toward the figure's hand, and my vision began to blur. Everything around me dissolved into white light. The shadows, the desks, the papers, all gone. Only the figure remained, and then silence. When my vision cleared, I was standing in the same hallway, but everything was different. The peeling paint was gone. The flickering lights were steady. The air smelled warm and sterile, like a library freshly cleaned. I looked down at my hands. They weren't my hands, pale, smooth, unfinished. A realization hit me like ice. I wasn't in the building anymore. I was the building now. The archivist stood across from me, tall, imposing, and perfectly calm. It smiled faintly, just enough to make my stomach knot. "You've arrived," it said. "Your account will be added to the archives." I tried to run. The hallway stretched endlessly. Every door I tried to open led to another hallway, another room, another record. Whispers of previous occupants filled the air, murmuring in a language I somehow understood. Sign, submit, stay. I felt my thoughts slipping from me. My memories weren't mine anymore. They were becoming part of the filing system. Every decision I ever made, every moment of fear, every step I had taken, catalogued and stored. Then I saw it. A mirror at the end of the hall. I walked toward it, my reflection hesitant, distorted. But as I came closer, the reflection changed. It wasn't me. It was a younger version of me, smiling innocently, and below it, scratched into the frame, were the words, "Next to be archived." The archivist's voice echoed from everywhere at once. "You cannot leave. You never will. You only exist to document, to record, to remind." I tried to scream. No sound came out. A pen floated in front of me. Pages hovered in mid-air, waiting. I realized I had no choice. My hands moved on their own. I signed my own name. The moment the pen hit the paper, everything went white again, and I was alone. Alone, but not free. Somewhere deep in the archive, my consciousness whispered into the next room, watching, waiting, recording, and behind the glass of every room, someone else would come. Another intruder, another observer, another soul to feed the archive. The building never sleeps, it never forgets. And it is always hungry. If this story kept you watching, there's another real horror waiting for you. Click on the screen, and don't watch it alone.